Hello, welcome to It's So Friday. Today we are going to be working on a Statue of Liberty quilt, if you couldn't already tell. I have been waiting for this It's So Friday day since like months, I tell you. I went to New York in September, I saw the Statue of Liberty, I bought myself a foam hat, and I brought it back here for this episode specifically. This is my Olfa rotary cutter guiding the way to a new exciting quilt project. And today we are going to use this amazing Patriots panel using an Andy Warhol inspired color scheme. Our art guy came in this morning and was like, do you know that that's Andy Warhol inspired? And look at the colors and stuff. And I was like, I like that it's fancy. So I guess Andy Warhol was obsessed with New York, so it's fitting. I bet you can't even wait to make this quilt. You can see it behind me. If this American Dream quilt is not the epitome of the American Dream, I don't know what is. So check out the Robert Kaufman link to this free pattern. It's in our post, and download it. It'll look just like this. You're going to be inspired, you're going to be happy. You're going to wish you had a Statue of Liberty hat so that you could sit at your sewing machine and regally sew this amazing quilt. Let's get right to it. You're going to need your panels, and you're going to want multiple copies because you're going to need some for a quilt. You're going to need some to like applique to shirts. I mean, this is something you're going to want. Also, if at any point in this episode you would like just like a nifty factoid about the Statue of Liberty, just holler, raise your hand, and I will tell you things. I guess let's get started right away by talking about what you're going to need. So the pattern walks you through it. This is actually a super simple quilt. It is great for beginners. We've actually done a churn dash quilt before on It's So Friday. And so to separate this one, what I want to talk about a little bit is how you can speed it up. So once you are pretty confident in sewing these seams, we're going to talk about some ways to make things faster. So first things first, take your panel and cut your squares into cut your panel into the squares as designated by the pattern size. I think they're 9.5 inches. They're great. Now, speaking of measurements, does anyone know how thick the Statue of Liberty is? A lot of people think that it's like a thick statue, but actually the Statue of Liberty is made entirely of copper, and it is only about as thick as 2 pennies put together. Isn't that amazing? Now the copper is actually an original the copper color wasn't originally green, but it started to oxidize in the weather, which gave it that really lovely green patina. And in many cases around the statue, the patina is as thick as the 2 penny width of copper, and that actually protects it from the elements and keeps it from eroding. Isn't that interesting? Learning something new every day. All right. Your pattern is going to have you cut your fabric into with the fabric strips, and then it wants you to subcut them into smaller pieces. Now, when you're sewing things that are like a long strip, it's hard to sew a really, really long strip of fabric without it kind of warping a little bit, especially if you're like, I don't know, like drinking a little bit of wine because it's Friday night and you just want to relax, or you want to like watch a movie over here and you're not paying full attention. And that's usually why a pattern has you subcut into smaller units. You're doing smaller seams, less likely for you to swerve while driving. You'll notice in a basic churn dash block though, that the construction is the same. You have a white piece and an orange piece, white piece orange, white piece orange, white piece orange. So you could do one really, really long seam all at once and then subcut from there. So that's what I'm going to do. I have cut my Kona strips and my white strips, and they're these long pieces. I mean, they're quite long. And I'm going to match up the ends here, take them over to my sewing machine, and I'm just going to drive one really, really long seam. But first I'm going to make sure that my needle will not come unthreaded, because everyone knows how good that is. All right. While I'm doing this really long seam, I'm just going to be careful to keep my edges lined up, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of information about the Statue of Liberty. Now, the Statue of Liberty was actually dedicated and given to the United States in 1886 to celebrate our centennial. And it was a gift from the people of France. The decision was that the statue would be paid for by the people of France, and that the pedestal on the land that it was placed on would be paid for by the American people. And it all sounded good and fun until the American people ran out of funding and we couldn't quite get the money together to pay for the base. And at this point, something kind of cool happened. Joseph Pulitzer, who is the dude that the Pulitzer Prize is named after, he actually ran a charity donation drive. He got over 120,000 Americans to donate money, and most of them gave less than $1. And that drive actually raised enough money to build the base of the pedestal where the statue stands today. So it truly was something that was made by or funded by the American people, just in a really great group effort and a way that people could contribute. And actually the reward for giving a little bit of money was a little tiny scale replica of the Statue of Liberty. I would love to hunt one of those down. Now that you have your long piece of fabric sewn, we are going to jump over to our up-close ironing camera, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that ironing. Yeah, we are going to jump to our up-close ironing camera. All right. When you have any solid color and you have white on the other side, you want to make sure you press to the dark side. Now, the reason that you do this is right here. If you've pressed to the light side, you can see that little bit of a darker image here with the white, and you don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do is just gently finger press it and then come with our iron. Now you want to be careful that you're not warping this because you have a really long piece of fabric. You might notice that our edges don't entirely line up on this side, and that's okay. That's because fabric width varies just a little bit, but this project has enough room where you're going to be okay with having that little bit off at the ends. So as you go, just carefully finger press and then just give it a little press. If you want some additional support, I've got my flatter here. It is a spray starch alternative. It is wonderful when you're doing this kind of work. It just kind of helps everything behave as it should. All right, let's give it another spritz. And a press. All right, isn't that lovely? Now let's go back to our main camera and talk that through again. All right, so now you have this great long piece of fabric and you're like, great, now what do I do? This is super easy, and it will actually speed up your process because the blocks are the same through the whole quilt. So you could actually do this whole thing, just do this long strip piecing and then go to cut your blocks. Make sure that you check your math and you cut to the right size. So my squares are 9.5 inches. And what's great about a churn dash is that the pieces on all 4 sides of your center are always going to be the same. So you don't have to remember a lot of math. So I'm just going to take a ruler that is at least 9.5 inches. And I am going to give it a cut. Now let's actually go up close. I'll show you what I'm looking for when I do this. Okay, so you have your piece here, and I want to line up my line along the center line here so that I make sure that I'm cutting it straight. The top and bottom will also line up, but I like this line to look really good and clean. So now I'm going to go back and cut. Now, you need 4 of these cuts for your project, for each block. And so I'm just going to give it a cut, turn this one because it has that selvage on the other side, give that a real quick chop. And then repeat that for the next 3 pieces. All right, did you know that until 2011, anyone that wanted could come up and walk all the way up into the Statue of Liberty and go up into the crown, which is the windows in her crown. You would think that those windows are like really, really tall or as tall as a person, but let me tell you, I've been up there and those windows are teeny tiny. They're only about maybe this big. Now, if you go on Wikipedia or the internet and you Google people in the Statue of Liberty, you'll see them hanging out the window waving. They don't let you do that anymore. When you go up into the crown now, there's a park ranger and they are sitting there and the windows are only open like this much at the bottom, but it's still a really fascinating view. So if you are planning a trip to New York, you make sure that you book yourself a trip to the Statue of Liberty and book those crown tickets early on because they sell out fast. Now, the Statue of Liberty has been a national monument since 1924, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. We were gifted this statue in 1886, and it took that long for it to become a national monument. but it was popular way back in the day too. It was originally supposed to be a lighthouse, but it was not such a successful lighthouse. They actually said it was more like a glowworm, and you couldn't even see it from the city of Manhattan. That's how dull it was. So we'll get back to that. Right now, we're going to make some half-square triangles. For each block, you need 4 half-square triangles. And using the 2 at a time method, you are only going to need 2 pieces of your background and 2 of the color. So let's go to the up-close camera, and I'll show you what we're doing. This is the same process that we do anytime we make 2 at a time half-square triangles. You take your background, or whichever one is going to be easier, and using a erasable pen, I'm using a Friction pen by Pilot. You can get them at Target or any quilt store. Just mark from point to point. And now I'm going to put my color piece and my background piece right sides together, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of the marked line. All right, let's go back to the sewing machine. Now we're going to be using a 1/4 inch seam, like I said, and sewing a 1/4 inch on either side of that line. All right. Now, going back to that whole idea of the Statue of Liberty as a lighthouse, it was a really epic failure as a lighthouse. You couldn't see it, it didn't really work, but it tried. And so the original sculptor, Frederick Bartholdi, who was the sculptor, and the metalworker was actually Gustav Eiffel of the Eiffel Tower. He had said originally that he thought the best way to make this statue really shine was to gild the outside of the torch. And that ended up just being way too expensive, so they didn't do that. They did, in fact, make a stained glass version, which you can still see if you go to the Statue of Liberty Museum. It's beautiful and amazing, and still not super effective. So in 1986, the torch was replaced and gilded in 24 karat gold. So it's actually 24 karat gold. In the daytime, it catches the sun, and at night, there are outside lamps that point up at it and make it shine. All right. Now that we've sewn a 1/4 inch on either side of the line, we are going to cut from point to point. So using your ruler, go ahead and give that a quick cut. Did you know that France actually has a scale replica of the Eiffel Tower that was gifted to them by the American people in 1889? It is a 1/4 scale replica, but if you can't get to New York to see the Statue of Liberty, perhaps you should go to France and see the smaller version, which isn't quite as impressive, because it's not as big, and bigger things are always more fun. The Statue of Liberty is 22 stories high, and to walk all the way up, you have to go through this tiny, tiny circular staircase that is only about as wide as your shoulders, and I've seen someone get claustrophobic and just kind of freak out because it's really, really narrow. Now we're going to go over to the iron, and we're going to iron. Now again, with our ironing, make sure that you're not pressing with the white showing in the background. So put the background down and then press towards your color, which will leave this nice and clean. Did you know that a lot of people feel like when they are ascending the stairs to the Eiffel Tower, to the Statue of Liberty, they feel like they've gone all the way up into the torch because it's such a narrow, circular, winding staircase. But in fact, going back to our regular camera here, in fact, the torch arm has actually been closed since 1916. Now, the statue is designed to sway in the wind, and it actually gets struck by lightning quite a bit because it's copper and it conducts electricity very well. And because the torch arm sways more than anything else, it's been closed for a long time so that no one gets hurt. You can actually see in the museum, the little guardrail where you used to be able to go out this tiny window and walk around the whole thing with this little guardrail. It's amazing that they don't, I can understand why they don't let you go up anymore. But the National Park Service has to climb a 40-foot ladder through this really narrow opening to be able to clean the floodlights that are outside of the current torch, which keeps it shining and bright. Now that you've made your half square triangles, go ahead and square up to 3.5 inches. Don't skip this step. Squaring up is important. Now I'm going to do this just by lining my points up on the diagonal to make sure that they fit really nicely. And then I'm going to go ahead and give it a cut. So while you've always known that the Statue of Liberty is this lovely green, I don't know if you knew this, but I just recently found out that back in, let me see, what was the date that this happened? 1906. people thought that the green on the statue was damaging the statue, and they Congress authorized something like $61,000, or $68,000, which is similar to about $1.7 million in today's money, to go ahead and scrape it all off. But people were so outraged at the idea of the green being removed. They loved the coloring. They felt like it was beautiful. And so there was a lot of research conducted on whether the green oxidization on the copper was damaging the statue. It was determined that it was actually protecting the statue, softening its features, and making it even more beautiful. So they didn't scrape off the patina from the outside, but they did from the inside. The statue has actually been entirely repaired several times, because originally, back in the day, when they tried to make it waterproof, they used something that was like asbestos lined, and it wasn't actually effective. And so they had to completely go in and scrape that out and reseal it with stuff as the technology has progressed. But the men that had to do that work actually had to wear like moon suits so that they wouldn't be breathing in all this bad gunk that was in the statue. Because it is a statue, it has holes in it, and water would actually leak in and damage the statue. At one point, the arm had been put on incorrectly, so it was not actually aligned, and one of the points of the crown was actually hitting the arm in the wind and damaging it. So when they redid the entire statue bit by bit, they fixed it up and reaffixed the arm and fixed the points on her crown, which were individually coming apart at the bottoms because they were rusted from wear. Anyway, what's important to know is that this statue is amazing and has been constructed and reconstructed so many times. And if you go to Liberty Island, you can go to the museum and see a lot of this, including some amazing pictures of how it was constructed and how the metalwork worked. It's amazing. All right, we're on for the next step of our project. Take your center square, lay it out the way you want, and lining up your pieces that you've constructed with the color closest in and the background around, you can kind of visualize what you need to do. All right, so we are going to attach these bits to here to get these arcs. Now, I like to chain piece these, especially if you're doing a big project. So the easiest way to remember it is that the bottom here needs to go with the bottom line here. So anytime you're doing it, just make sure the longest point of one of your half square triangles lines up with the longest point of the blue. And that way you can chain piece a whole bunch and not accidentally attach things to the wrong side. All right, and it's great to chain piece when you can, even though I say that and then always forget on camera, but it's nice. Chain piecing is nice, and if you're doing a quilt like this, it's going to speed up your process. Now, one of the things I kind of like to do sometimes, even though it's maybe kind of weird and clunky, is if I want to chain piece but I don't want to take this out, I will, if I have a long enough piece, I'll line it up to where it goes again, and then I'll like fold it over so that the piece is still attached, but I can get what I need sewn while it's still hooked into the machine. And this little trick is brought to you exclusively by laziness. All right. So this, then you just clip these apart, and you can see the one that I did twice is already finished, and the other one has to be done again. And that's why it's nice to do piecing that way. I think I already said this, but in case I didn't, the torch has been closed since 1916, and that just makes me really sad because I really wanted to climb all the way up into the torch, but I couldn't. All right, let's see. Now I'm going to give these a quick press. Trying to think about any other little factoids I have, but I feel like I've shared quite a bit of them. If anyone has any questions about, the Statue of Liberty or the quilting project that we're here to work on, you just let me know, and my friend Kyle will inform me of those. Kyle wants to know what else I did in New York. Honestly, I was there for the Statue of Liberty. No, I was there for my friend Hayden's wedding. If you're watching this, hi Hayden. I remember your wedding too. I just also really remember the Statue of Liberty. Oh, whoops. My machine came unthreaded here. You're fine. I'm trying to think about other really cool things about the Statue of Liberty that you guys might like to know. It used to be open all the time, and you could go, as many people as they wanted could go up into the crown. And they actually closed that after 2011. They thought it was a little bit of a, uh-oh, I'm doing something wrong, a little bit of a danger zone because it was so hard to get people out. Because it is a really narrow stairway and also this like really crazy little circular set of stairs. There is an elevator for in case something like really bad happens, but I was there and it's not like a posh elevator that you like can't wait to ride on. It was like kind of scary looking. You would have to like step over this crazy embankment. Anyway, back to what else I did in New York. I was there for a wedding, but I went to the top of the Rockefeller Center. I wore a dinosaur dress so that I could say that dinosaurs were on top of the world. And I went and walked along the High Line several times, which is this really cool old railway track that has been restored into a public access footpath, but it's elevated, so it's on these old railway lines. It has a really beautiful view of where the trains sleep at night. Which is not what they're technically called, but that's what I call it, when the trains go take naps. And that was really neat. I ate cookies many times. My machine is saying something has gone awry. Oh, it's tension. Maybe it's my bobbin. Let's try this again, guys. Something is off because that tension is really, really tight. But I'm just going to try sewing with it anyway, and let's see what happens. It's going to go, beep. Oh, it didn't. That's kind of nice. What a surprise. Okay. Right now, I'm attaching the side pieces to the center panel so that I can attach the block. Yeah. Oh, I went to Ellis Island. Someone was asking me that. Now, I went to Ellis Island, and it was really amazing and beautiful and a lot of history and really, really cool. But honestly, the thing I remember most about Ellis Island is the fact that it had been raining that day. And it had rained so much that there were flash flood warnings. And I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but if you ever get an emergency alert on your phone, it goes, so Ellis Island is this like the building that it's in is this like cavernous building with these really huge ceilings, and they're all like marble and everything echoes. So now imagine like 37 people who don't know how to turn off those alarms on their phones because they're from out of the country or out of state and they've never experienced that before, and their phone just geographically knows that they are there, and so it's sending them warnings, walking around with all the buzzings going and echoing. It was something to behold. I finally went up to a stranger and said, "Sir, your phone." And he's like, "I know, I don't know how to turn it off." And so I helped him turn off his emergency alert, and he was so happy. He had just been walking around with his phone in his back pocket, driving him crazy for like an hour. It was quite long. Anyway, if you haven't had the chance to visit Ellis Island, it is fascinating. So much history there. It's really incredible. They have an entire exhibit of clothing that the immigrants who came through wore and brought with them, and what each different country and culture's artifacts look like. And it was just really, really amazing. Incredible to see, and beautiful, beautiful handwork in many of these garments.
Back to the project, there was a question about who sewed the pieces onto the square in a specific order.
For the question about sewing the pieces to the square in a particular order, I do the bottom and the top separately, and then I do these to the middle piece, and then I sew them together either way. You can do them in any order, but it makes sense to try and, you would want to make them in long straight lines so that you can eliminate weird seams. If you were to sew like if you were to sew one side and then an entire bottom and not the other side first, then you would have this odd seam that didn't match up. But you can do them in any order, and that's kind of the beauty of a churn dash block, is that it's pretty straightforward. All right. So, and when you're attaching the churn dash to your quilt, make sure that you put, again, the long lines, make sure that you, again, put the long lines close to the image you want, because otherwise you could have it upside down. Now we're just going to give this another quick press, and then we're going to talk about sashing options. So, any other questions about New York, the statue, the project? That's fine. I would like to point out that my hat is the crown, but if you turn, you can see the statue. She's here. I like it. Okay. Now you have this block, and you're going to continue making these blocks until you've made as many as you like. Now, the sashing options, just to give you a look-see of what they look like here, this layout uses cornerstones. Cornerstones are great because they kind of help you know exactly where the seam should go. And so in this case, our sashing is 2.5-inch strips. So to make this work, we just take 15.5-inch by 2.5-inch strips, and you're going to sew them either like on either side of the blocks and in between the blocks to connect them. So I can do that real quick. Oh, my needle's going to come unthreaded. Whoopsies. I'm here to fix it. I'm always here to fix it. What did I do? Okay, here we go. Alrighty. I really love cornerstones. I think that they add a lot of traditional charm to a project that maybe looks a little bit more modern because of the colors and the fabric choices. But it's also something that you could completely leave out just by taking width of fabric strips and just sewing straight through. Cornerstones are a way of life choice, and I often choose the cornerstone way. But if that is not your preference, don't worry about it at all. When I press these, I like to press, let's go to the pressing camera and I'll show you this. When I press these blocks, I like to not try and bend this seam backwards, so I just press towards the sashing. And then when I put my cornerstones in, I'll press my cornerstones the other direction, and that's going to eliminate seam bulk. Now, making sure that my ladies are facing the same direction, I'm going to just lay this one right sides together, and I'm going to sew along this seam. All right. So. If you are in New York, you can buy these hats almost anywhere. They are in slightly different shades of green. Some of them are less fancy than others. They do not all have the Statue of Liberty little poof guy. My husband tried to convince me we should just buy one like in Times Square so that I would have it and not worry about it and not forget, but I insisted that I buy mine at the Statue of Liberty store, because what's more fun than buying your Statue of Liberty hat at the Statue of Liberty store? I should note that I did consider buying myself a flashlight that looked like the torch. But then I thought, perhaps not. Perhaps I should not do that. And I didn't, and I was a little sad about that. All right. I don't want to bore you guys with this, so I'm just going to add one more side seam and then show you kind of how you can finalize the construction. So I'm now attaching another long piece of fabric to the edge of my block. All right, I kid. I'm going to do it on one more side too. And I'm on the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. Now, using that trick I talked about, I'm just going to loop my fabric around, and it's not really a trick. It's just, like I said, too lazy to like cut my thread and go again. So I'm going to sew this also. I do this a lot at home whenever I can. I wonder if you guys do too. I wonder if anyone else finds the Statue of Liberty as fascinating as I do. I know that my friend Yael does not like my factoids. I tried to tell her all about them, and she said something like, "Don't you dare tell everyone that I didn't want to hear all these factoids." So, all right. All right. But I just think it's so interesting, and the more you know, right? Yeah. Plus, it's a really impressively large statue, and it's really beautiful, just really, really beautiful. And there's a lot of symbolism built into the sculpture, and it's wonderful.
So Hayden offered that next time you're in New York, you can go to the Museum of Natural History and get you a T-Rex hat.
My friend Hayden, who lives in New York and got married, is the one that's telling me I should get a T-Rex hat. And then we could do an It's So Friday about dinosaurs, and I could wear a T-Rex outfit. All right.
Oh, and you're being asked, did you see Anita Grossman-Solomon?
I did see Anita Grossman-Solomon when I was in New York. Is Amy Meek asking that?
Yeah.
Hi, Amy. I did see Anita. We had dinner for my birthday right after I saw the Frozen on Broadway. So I guess I did quite a bit when I was in New York. Right now, I am sewing my block to a piece that I had already attached the cornerstones to. Now, when you do this, the only really points that you need to match are at your cornerstone junctions to make sure that, that the blocks are going to align nicely as you want them to. And so I am just not pinning because I don't like to pin. And I'm just going for it and then making sure to gently nudge those seams together, nest them as I get to the ends. My friend Nicole was in New York like 2 days ago, and she was hanging out with Anita, and I was very jealous. All right, so let's go to the up-close camera, and I'll show you what I just did here. Okay, I just sewed my blocks to a strip that already had the sashing attached. Now, what you're looking for when you do this is to make sure that your seams are nesting just like this. See how this one's going this way and this one's going this way? That reduces your seam bulk. If you had your seams going the other direction, say like this, you would have 4 seams right here and only like 2 here, and that's not what you want. So when I'm pressing a long strip, because if you're making this at home, you'll likely be making the entire quilt. When I'm pressing a long strip, what I like to do to make sure that I don't mess up my seams, like don't look at that, I will press from the back first, just gently in the direction that I want it to go, so that I've kind of already helped that quilt along. And then I will turn it over to the correct way, and I'll use my fingers to just make sure that, that I don't have any I'll use my fingers to make sure I don't have fabric tucked under, and then I'll give it a press from the top. And that's just the way I handle really long seams, like when you're piecing together an entire quilt top, to keep it nice and crisp. And you can see here at the intersections that my points are pretty good. This one is off just a little bit, but no one will judge you. I won't judge you. If someone judges you, you just tell them that you want your quilt back and they don't get to be your friend. All right. And so we're just going to finish giving this a little press. Yay! I'm so impressed with this. And let's go back to the main camera. The beauty of working with large-scale blocks is that it doesn't take a lot to have a really amazing finished quilt super fast. It makes just a really big quilt very fast, and it's really still so much fun. You can add a lot of color and design choices to something so simple, but whoever receives it is never going to know how simple it is because you're not going to show them this So Friday episode. All right, that's all I have to say. So I can think about more facts about the Statue of Liberty, but I'm not really sure what else. I've shared so many of my factoids early on. I think that's all I have. I'm living the American dream right now with my Statue of Liberty outfit and my Statue of Liberty quilt. Thanks for joining us for So Friday. See you next time. Hello. Welcome to It's So Friday. I'm so excited, super excited, so excited. Go ahead and cut out all the directions. Well, don't cut out the directions. I just don't want to do it wrong on camera. That would be embarrassing. Okay, and I'm doing something wrong. Oh, that's wrong. What the heck did I just do? Ha-ha! Woohoo! Tension is no laughing matters. Hey yo, what are you doing? Pin free's the way to be. Don't like to pin. I also don't like to have the thing not work on live camera though. That's kind of embarrassing.